Many of the glyphs that scholars figured out how to read. Next. This is one of the creation monuments. They're called creation monuments because they talk about the end of the 13th Baktun and what happens. Some of this is up for interpretation, but it's quite clear that they regarded the end of the 13th Baktun as a kind of cosmogenesis. That's why my book is called Maya Cosmogenesis 2012. They envisioned the ends of these world's 8 cycles is not a cataclysmic end of the world, but as a rebirth, a renewal. One more, next. And that long count monument is from that one's from Copan, the site of Copan. And there's another one from Quirigua, which is somewhat similar to that. And there's one from Coba in the Yucatan as well. There's one from Tortuguero. And there's several of these creation monuments. Next. All right, so the World Age Doctrine is kind of the underlying way that the Maya perceived time. And what's at the root of this World Age Doctrine is that time is cyclic. Time moves in cycles. So we have the long count calendar that gives us this cycle ending and this 13 Baktun cycle, which in the calendar is one world age. We also have the creation mythology, the Popol Vuh, or the hero twin myth. This hero twin myth also describes a succession of world ages, but in mythological terms. It's talking about how humanity moves through these different periods. And at the end of each period, humanity goes through a transformation and renewal. Okay, so the cycle ending is always about transformation and renewal. And this is what we actually, this is the information that comes to us from the primary document on world ages. Okay, so all this, what we encounter so much in the media about cataclysm and the end of the world and so on, I like to say that if you think 2012 is about an apocalypse, you're not looking deeply enough at the material. Because world age transition is, yes, it's about the death of what was previously there, but it's a transformational understanding of how time works. Next. And in a nutshell, the hero twin story involves different deity characters. Seven Macaw is the vain and false ruler that appears at the end of the cycle. He's sort of the archetype of self-serving egoism. One Hunahpu is the father of the hero twins. He was sacrificed. He got his head cut off by the lords of the underworld. He was tricked and betrayed. So he's in a state of fragmentation. One Hunahpu represents our true selves. And this is an insight into the cycles of time to the extent that at a certain point, humanity got cut off. We got cut off from our connection to our true self, our true unity consciousness. And that's kind of like the Christian fall, the fall of humanity into spiritual forgetting or spiritual darkness. But in the cycles of time, there's always a period of forgetting and then there's a period of awakening. Like it's just a metaphor of how cycles work. The day cycle, for example. From dawn, there's a period of increasing light, and then after noon, there's increasing darkness. So that's kind of the way that cyclic time philosophy works, and it brings up this whole idea that consciousness, it's not so much like a Darwinian evolutionary idea. I think there's something very flawed with that idea, especially as it relates to consciousness. Because the ultimate state of consciousness is unlimited, unconditioned freedom. Consciousness reconnected with its transcendent, eternal, infinite root. Can we evolve towards that? It's there. We just have to awaken to it. So I like to think of it, just for food for thought, I like to think of this as sort of the whole process is a sort of more of an awakening. And that's kind of what's going on. So we have to strip away the veils of illusion. And this starts to bring up some of the spiritual teachings, which we'll get into later. In fact, I think that Because time is kind of limited here, but we do have another section tomorrow at 3 o'clock, the insight sections. I might reserve some of the spiritual teaching material to that part. So the long count and the hero twin creation myth are actually two expressions or aspects of this underlying world age doctrine. Next. So where was the long count calendar created? Well, the earliest long count dates are found from the 1st century BC. So this is actually before the classic Maya civilization. They're found at sites like Abad Hakalik, El Baul, Chiapa de Corzo, and next. And this is a region of where these early long count monuments are found from the 1st century BC. It's a region of southern Mexico where the red circle is. Southern Chiapas by the Guatemala border. This is the time and the place of the Izapan civilization, which was the culture that came before the classic Maya. So the birth of the long count actually is found in this early Maya context, which is referred to as the Izapan civilization. Next. And the great Maya scholar Michael Coe actually said that Izapa is really fundamentally important in the formulation of this long count calendar. Next. Now, as for the creation myth, so the other question that occurs if you're sort of like, like a unschooled guy living in Boulder in the early 90s, and you're exploring these things, and you're just getting back from your 4th trip to Central America, and you're asking these questions, trying to figure this stuff out. You say, okay, where was the long count first formulated? And you can go to the academic literature and find that it was this context of the Izapan culture. And then realizing that the creation myth is kind of like the partner, the mythological partner to the long count, because both are expressing the world ages idea. Then you say, where was the creation myth formulated? Well, look at all these monuments here. These are all monuments, carved iconographic monuments. They're not hieroglyphic. Hieroglyphic language has not been developed yet. These are about 2,200 years old, and they all come from the same site, and these pictographs are depicting episodes from what we later know and call the hero twin creation myth. This is the earliest representation of the creation myth. Next. And they come from the site of Izapa. So Izapa looms large as a place that we can study to understand what the creators of the 2012 calendar were thinking. Why did they pick 2012? What did they think about it? I consider this to be an important way to slice into this whole 2012 discussion. It kind of centralizes the whole thing, I think, in my mind anyway. I mean, there's a lot of different things that come into, play in this whole discussion. And some of them are pretty far out indeed. But I think that to bring it back to center, we need to remember that the Maya insight, the Maya material, is at the root of this 2012 topic, which, sounds kind of silly to even have to emphasize that, but, having been involved in this for several decades, it does seem like the topic sort of has grown beyond its birthplace. And part of that's, valid, there's because, what's going on in the world today, with the economic meltdown and just everything that's going on in the world today. It's like we're concerned, we feel like something's going on. Well, that's certainly true, and it's important and I think interesting to remember that when this calendar was invented some 2,000 years ago, the Maya put this 13 Baktun cycle in place, and they projected forward to December 21st of 2012, and they believed that this date would coincide with the world going through a great transformation. And they said that 2,000 years ago, and that's exactly what's going on in the world today. So because of that, it seems like maybe they were onto something. Maybe that's really, a good reason to look very closely at the other things that they have to offer about their insights into 2012, which includes a kind of astronomical science of cycles, as well as a prophecy, as well as spiritual teachings that are appropriate for people that are living during those cycle endings. So it's really a nice sort of three-part package that one can, spend a lot of time with and go deeper into. Next. So Zamba is the birthplace of the 2012 cosmology. Next. Zamba is a place of calendrical origins, as indicated in a couple of different ways. It's at the 15-degree north latitude, and within the tropics, within the tropical zone, the sun can pass through the center of the sky, the zenith, and it does so on 2 days every year. When the sun occupied the cosmic center, the exact center of the sky overhead, the zenith, that was significant for the Maya people. So they were interested in the dates when this happened. But the exact 2 days of the year when this happens depends on your latitude. So at the latitude of Zamba, next, the 2 days are May 1st and August 12th. Well, this is interesting because it divides the year into two sections, one of which is 260 days. Many of you probably know that 260 days is the sacred number of the Maya, of the Tzolk'in calendar. The 260-day sacred calendar is like the building block of the entire Maya concept of time. So this is significant, and it points up Zamba as being correctly located as a place of calendrical origins. Next. So, I'll just spend a little bit of time on the 260-day calendar. Just really briefly, I want to point up something about this because it indicates how the Maya perceive reality in a very profound and sophisticated way. The 260-day calendar is significant for a number of reasons, and I sort of suggest that it's a key that unites different dimensions of our experience of reality. The Maya daykeepers today, those who follow the 260-day calendar, they're still following it there in the highlands of Guatemala. It survives. It's an unbroken calendar tradition, some 3,000 years old. They say that it corresponds to the 9-month period of human gestation. It's roughly 260 days. And Maya midwives actually use it to calculate when a baby's going to be born. They adjust for moon positions a little bit, but so this indicates the 260-day cycle as this period of unfolding that we all experience. It's our first shared experience of unfolding. Now, it's also the interval between the planting and harvesting of corn in the highlands of Guatemala. So human beings, according to the creation myth, were made from corn dough. And so this is significant as another sort of cosmogenesis or creation metaphor. But it's an agricultural use. Most importantly, probably, is that the 260-day calendar is used as a key in the almanacs, in the predictive calendars of the Maya, where they have, like the Dresden Codex or the Madrid Codex, some of the few surviving Maya books, they have all these almanacs that schedule astronomical cycles, and the 260-day calendar is the key to this, where the cycles fall on the different day signs. So, by the way, the 260-day calendar, if you don't know, it's comprised of 13 numbers combining with one of 20 day signs. So you have 20 day signs and 13 numbers. 13 times 20 equals 260. But this whole paradigm of the 260-day calendar is significant because it shows how it's a numerical and philosophical key that operates on these different dimensions of human experience, from human biology to earth agriculture to the celestial cycles in the sky, the astronomical cycles. Well, this is just an insight that I mentioned earlier. As above, so below. The cycles in the heaven reflect cycles on earth, which I think of as a very profound understanding of the interwoven nature of these different dimensions of reality.